And then, Senate, what would you tell to families that have had experiences? As you mentioned, he also had negative experiences. But now we're creating the space for people to come forward and point out, like, hey, these are some things that we would like to see progress in, so that you guys could better serve the community. What would you tell to those family, students, or whoever's out there that's a little bit weary of approaching them and letting them know their thoughts?
I'm going to be frank in that their thoughts and concerns are incredibly valid and come from, in all these circumstances, their own experiences. I'm not going to be the one to tell anybody that the police are there to protect them. I personally don't believe that. You know, the history of police is slave patrol. And so I think all that we've actually seen through body cam footage and through people's footage, starting at Rodney King, which was a guy on a handheld camera, who originally sent that video to the police didn't want it. With police in general, from inception to today, there is no accountability. The very few times police are held accountable, it's an exception to the rule. It's less than 1% of the time, and that's when they're caught doing actually illegal things, despite breaking our constitutional rights and freedoms. So it's a tricky thing. I don't have a positive thing to say. I don't think coffee with the cop makes anything better for the community. Over 50% of all of our tax dollars goes to the police. I don't believe the police are equipped enough, trained enough to handle all these issues. And I want to be clear, that doesn't mean I believe police need more training. I think the community needs more resources. And I think it's not that I'm saying, I think that just as a community and people, we need to really understand that less police does not mean we are less safe. And we don't need more police to be more safe.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned that it's not more training, that it needs more resources. Here we have somebody who I'm sure would be open to hear, what do you mean by more resources? What resources would the community need to bring the police, the law enforcement, and them together?
Right, so I'm not definitely not talking about more resources for the police. I'm talking about resources for a community. An example is I actually grew up in Northridge. Here we're at CSUN, right? I grew up in Northridge, and the community I grew up in was well resourced, right? We had parks available. We had the neighbors weren't stealing things. There's things that a well-resourced community has, and then there's crimes that don't exist in those communities. They actually just don't exist. You know, there's certain crimes that only exist in some communities, and those are communities that have a lack of resources. When, again, most of the money is going to police and the police are called and someone with a gun is showing up to suicide, drug overdose, homeless situations, I don't believe it's serving anybody in the community. I think we need to reallocate resources and redefine what safety means for all of us.
So I'm sorry, I may have missed it, but we're talking about adding more resources to the community. What, if you were to give 2 examples of what these resources would look like, what would they be?
Education would be a simple one in communities that don't have it, that don't have daycares, that don't have parks and recreation. That's what I would advise money from policing going towards these other communities.
So this brings us to a little bit in the territory of cultural differences. Every city that you're in, you're going to grow up having those different resources. When it comes to education, having different educational backgrounds, open to that. Do you see the cultural differences as an impact, or that having different types of education could potentially allow for the community to have a better understanding of what role law enforcement plays in?
Well, I think the understanding from the community is essential, but communities are extremely valuable, and there's a lot that goes on in our communities in terms of resources that are needed. Senate said something that I agree with him, that I believe that education is a key part of ensuring that our communities become stronger. And that's why I believe that it is important for the Department of Police Services here at CSUN to be able to create safety in the campus for all students, from all cultures, from all genders. We have to do a better job in terms of understanding what those needs are. And he's absolutely right that the communities outside of CSUN and here at CSUN have a lot of valuable aspects to them. We have a lot of students here that are coming from communities that have a lot of great things happening in them but are not recognized. And I truly, truly believe, again, growing up in public housing my whole life, that some of the things that he said are true, that even in those environments, we have to give our students a chance. We have to give our communities the resources that they need to be able to have their kids come to a campus like CSUN with so many great resources. There's mental health resources, there's counselors here, there's many resources that we as a police department have to play a role in connecting the students with, because that's what's gonna strengthen the experience here at CSUN, and that's what's gonna cause for more students to graduate. I really believe in that, and it's part of my work, and I'm determined to be able to make those connections for the entire community here on this campus.
Senate Catarino, thank you so much for being here and having this discussion. We could really go on for a few other hours. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time. Thank you for watching On Point.